Welcome, everyone, to the Feminine Outliers podcast, your dose of fun, life advice, and experiences from two African professional women living and working in the Western world. We are your hosts, Zelda Wasau,
and Cholwe Bandona.
and we are excited to have you here with us. So, welcome back to another episode. I'm personally really excited about this episode that we're going to do today, which, as you can tell from the title, is going to be Identity Crisis. But as per usual, before we get into the topic of the day, we want to talk about our unlearning, what we're unlearning for the week before we head into the topic for the week. So I will start with Cholwe and I will ask, what are you unlearning this week?
Yeah. So this week, I am unlearning, and by experience actually, and I know Zell, you can relate to this one. Is if you do not master or control yourself, you are bound to not get the things you want. I guess I don't know if it's an unlearning. I may have switched it, but pretty much this is the learning of it. So, the thing is that for a long while, I guess, just in general, I'll speak for myself, is that I have a tendency to just go about my day or my life, like just, the way I do things or the way I've been doing things. And sometimes I hide under this idea of I'm just being me. It is just me. And there are things that I love to do. For example, I like connecting with people, so I tend to be chatty and I can go on and on and on. And so you've probably seen me in action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh gosh. Yeah, and that's just like it's so organic, it's so natural. It's not me being pretentious or trying to force myself to interact. I'm wired in that way, quote unquote, wired. But I realize that even if it's a part of my nature, I also need to control or master that part of myself because if I don't, then I can't get other things done. I can't just go on in life just talking the whole day. I need to get stuff done. And so I am coming to realize that it's very wise to master yourself and know yourself well enough to control yourself so that you can make a plan or a strategy to get the things that you want done. Because if you just go by the whim and just say, I'm just living my life and being me, you might not get everything that you want in life because some things might require you to control the very natural part of who you are.
It's funny because essentially that's what you were learning, kind of, right? And what
Yeah.
I was going to say today, I'm pulling a Cholway and I'm going to say what I am learning. And
Okay.
what I am learning is kind of very similar to yours in the
Mm.
sense that my learning is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah, that's true. I don't even know why I'm laughing, but yes. Yes.
Like, and it
We're,
is kind of the same thing you're saying.
yeah. Yeah.
It's just like you focus more on, your tendencies, and you've noticed like what if you don't control yourself, how it could end up becoming an issue. And you did mention about how, you had to have a strategy in place and all that to get things done, which is the exact same thing I'm, talking. I was gonna learning this week. honestly, if you fail to plan, it doesn't matter what it is in life. I've realized that this is something that goes through so many different um, aspects in life. It applies to a lot of different situations. Some of the things I personally can say I was experiencing this in is, for example, I've been exercising in the morning, and I've been much more regular with doing it. It's been a bit of a challenge though to get everything I want in, because my going to bed times are still a bit iffy, to say
Mm,
the least. But I need to plan. If I need to actually have a set time, and I need to have a plan, wake up at this time, exercise, and
mm-hmm,
then this is exactly what I'm going to do for exercise, and then it will get done. Because if you don't have a plan, you don't say, I'm going to do this, what's going to happen is you wake up in the morning and then you're like, okay, what am I going to do? And then that extra time you're taking figuring out what you're going to exercise, what's your plan, is really good time to convince you to not do anything. And then
mm,
you just might not do what you want to do. In the same vein, this has been a really good lesson for us on this podcast, because it's been recently we've really struggled getting in times for recording. And
yeah.
granted, I'm proud of what we've done so far, because we're in two different continents and we have only missed 2 or 3 weeks max.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Yeah.
we've done a pretty good job, but I've realized, I actually have to have a plan in place. Like, this is when we're going to do it. Stick to the plan. I shouldn't change. Like, I shouldn't be like, oh, something has come up. And, I should have it like as if it's like a job and be like, nope, this is happening at
Mm-hmm.
this time. I have to do this, because if I don't plan, things are going to slip through the cracks. And I just felt that, because I was like, I also did sit down and, work on my marketing and do all the stuff that I wanted to actually work on, because I didn't plan it.
Mm,
In my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Was it done? No,
no.
because I didn't really
Yeah.
actually have a concrete plan in place. And so I just like, and I'm a very logical person. So for me, I really, value having systems in place that will help me excel. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just realized, like, you know what? I need to plan, or I'm just planning to fail. And that's not failure. I mean, I would say failure is not an option. Failure is definitely a learning tool. But if I could reduce it as much as possible,
Mm-hmm.
that's the plan. So I'm literally going to become one of those people who plans out a lot of things in her life. I'm actually thinking about doing time blocking during the day for
Mm,
getting things done. Like, this time you're doing this time you're doing this. And I'm going to include time for watching TV, like shows or anime, in that time
mm-hmm.
block. And I can't go over the time block. That's like my ultimate goal. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's really good. I was actually gonna say, I hope you're gonna time block for playtime, because that needs to be part of it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, because yeah, we need to play and work, right? So, it just hit me when you said, I need to treat, like what we're doing or other things, also other things in life, like kind of like a job. And I was just wondering to myself, why is it that it's easier to be accountable to others, but then to ourselves, it just seems like, we can wait to do this. And even though we really value what we are doing and we're very passionate about it, but
Hmm.
it just seems harder to like stick to a plan for ourselves. But we are on a mission, and that's why we are recording today. So
Yes, we are. And I'm so proud of us. Okay.
I know.
I know. And
Ah,
our learnings were really much in sync, which is great.
we've learned our lesson, or we're learning our lessons. So this is good. This is good.
Basically, today, We were talking about what we were learning. It's fine. We have days like
That's
that.
fine. Yes. Yes, it works. It works.
It does. It does. So, now we're gonna talk about identity crisis, and what I mean by that, I want us to touch on something specifically, in the sense that we both were raised in different countries than where we are at now. So
Mm-hmm.
we and we're raised in different cultures, and so
Mm-hmm.
there's all this, you know, the cultural differences to navigate. There's differences in upbringing, how you grew up, and then now what you believe might not be exactly the same thing because of what you've been exposed to over here. And that is all
Mm-hmm.
part and parcel of our identity. And I always find that, I mean, my parents would always tell me, you're a child of two worlds, um, in the sense that because, I grew up in Kenya, I'm living here now, and it's, they say, oh yeah, you have a child of two worlds, you have the best of both worlds, which is something will address later on, the best of both worlds. um
Mm.
but it's so interesting because I feel like it also puts you in a really weird conundrum, because I feel like the
Mm.
people I connect to the most are either immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know if you want to call them immigrants, basically people who are not staying in whatever their home country is, who have
Mm.
moved to a new place. I find like those are the people I connect with the most, because even though we have different experiences, different cultures, backgrounds from where we come from, we all have a similarity in the sense that, oh, we are all, you know, living now in the States, but we are, we're kind of foreigners in a sense. But
Mm-hmm.
even if you have citizenship, but you grew up in a different way. And so we kind of bond on that level. Um, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it can have its positives and its negatives. Um, and so that's what I wanted us to, basically like talk about and see what we think. Because I'm sure there are many people out there who are also in a similar situation. Because I don't know, I just find that sometimes, I of course I have pure American friends, like Americans who have grown up here,
Mm-hmm.
raised here and stuff like that. I have those friends, but I find like I have it's more easier for me to make friends with, even if it's an American, but it has to be an American who has lived outside of America. Like,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
mean, other than the Americans who've lived here, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you've lived in different countries or something like that, those are the people I tend to just, I guess, attract more and flock to more. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's it's just interesting because I think it's because, if you grew up here in America, you have the American experience, you think like an American, so that's what you're gonna do. And then back home in Kenya, if you grow up in Kenya, you stay in Kenya, you go to college there, do everything there, you'll think like a Kenyan, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how it is. And then, but if you're a Kenyan who migrates to the US, you'll still think like a Kenyan in some ways, but you also think like an American in some ways. And then it just throws you in the annoying middle section.
Mm.
Like
And
it's like I don't know. It's kind of like, do I know where I belong? And sometimes you feel like you don't belong fully to one side because your values and your systems have changed. What do you think
right.
about that? That was a long introduction.
Uh, okay. No, it was a good introduction. Yeah, yeah, that it's very real. Um, I w- I want to add that when you talked about connecting to immigrants, I want to add that I guess for me, what I'm also noticing is the level of assimilation that immigrants experience when they move from their home country to the US or the UK.
Hmm,
Like that even makes a difference. Um,
very true.
because, you know, um, And, like on this podcast, we talk about how we're trying out different things that we never did in our home country. And the more I keep exposing myself to things that I've never done, and I come to learn, I come to understand, it's also interesting that may not connect as well with somebody who just came from Zambia just recently because, there's
Mm-hmm.
just that difference. Because I'm like, oh, I understand this culture. I've been in this culture way longer than you. So you might still be carrying Zambian values and traits. And I'm a mix. So I can't really claim one culture over the other. So it's just fascinating to me. That's the thing. There's something about travel where once you start traveling, it just opens up your mind in a way that one, it can't go back to how you just used to think, and then you can't really, as you said, connect with one culture very strongly. So you're just now in this middle, which is very interesting because I feel like my pool of connections is smaller. Because like the first thing that I think about is where do you find these people? Like I don't know, Zell, what your experiences are, but like when I meet somebody who has like traveled, has left their home country, and
Mm-hmm.
also decided to assimilate in the new culture, and we're almost at the same level of connection. It's like a miracle to me. It's like,
Right?
where have you? I know. Like,
Like,
it's,
no, everything you're
yeah.
saying, I'm just like, oh my goodness, I agree with that. It's so, uh, like, and as I said, and as you said, travel is so enlightening, and yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know about you. Like I like when I meet that person, it's like I want to hang on to them and be like, "Don't leave me," because then I'll be back in the world in this gray area where people on both sides don't really see me as part of them, but I'm part of them, and it's just like, yeah, it's really hard to find those people just in day to day because we end up just being like that one person in our company and
Mm.
office and the grocery store, so it's just like where are these people?
But I don't know. I'm assuming you mean this, but I just want to say it before, in case people get a bit confused, and correct me if I'm wrong. But even when
Mm,
you say assimilate, you're not meaning dump your culture and just become take up the culture of the other person, the other place, and forget about your culture. But you're kind of meaning kind of having a blend of,
yes,
both cultures, right?
correct, yes, yes. And that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up because some people, as a way to maybe meet their needs or to survive, some people might think they have to leave they have to leave their culture or like not entertain their culture anymore. But no, I'm talking about where you are fully aware of where you're coming from, but you also realize that now you're in a new culture and you're not resistant to adopting some of the values or the principles or just the ways that the culture really, like just how things are done. You're open
Mm-hmm.
to it. So like an open-minded immigrant, let's say.
It's so that's so true. Um, because I have seen people who it's as if they've never left Kenya. The same practices, they
Yes.
come and they do exact same thing over here, and it's like, I mean, one thing I firmly believe is that every culture, civilization, whatever, has its advantages and disadvantages, has its pros and cons. So
Yes.
even if you think your culture is perfect, it isn't. There's certain things in your culture that can be improved on. There are definitely certain things you probably should be able to just drop or are not serving you
Mm-hmm.
anymore, or have don't really serve a purpose in your life. And the thing, those things that you have to celebrate, and they're really worth celebrating. And for me, I feel like coming here, one of the things that I have really, for example, it's kind of affected me in the sense that when it comes to timekeeping, I try to be more like much better at keeping time.
Mm.
And I've kind of been forced to, in the sense that here in America, they're like, you better keep your time. And when I go back
Mm-hmm.
to Kenya, and it's like people are not keeping time, and it's like so frustrating, and you're the one person who's keeping time. And it's like, that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that something simple a lot of us can um, relate to. But also going back home to Kenya, and just the way I think now, I don't have that whole mentality of, oh, serve the men before you serve the women. Uh,
Mm.
Girls, women need to dress like this. You know, a lot of the traditional things that I grew up with, I don't necessarily, some of them I don't
Mm-hmm.
um, just go by. Or like if you have traditions in which you have to give an aunt or uncle this before this happens and stuff like that. In my head, I question those
Mm.
things. But I feel like a lot of my friends and family back home don't question those things. So you
Mm.
seem to be the odd one out when you say, and like, no, why are we doing things like this? Why are we doing things like
Mm.
X, Y, or Z? One of the things back home is a huge thing is we call them chamas. And it's basically when women get together and they kind of um, contribute money to, it's kind of like a merry-go-round. I don't know if you know what a merry-go-round is,
Mm-hmm.
but they contribute money to a thing. And then I think it kind of helps. I think each, at a certain point, everyone can withdraw money for themselves, like a certain amount, something like that.
Mm.
And they kind of use it to invest and things like that. Things like that, which I mean, it can be helpful, but in my head, I'm like, not exactly the type of investment I'm looking at. Or how family
Mm.
just feels so entitled sometimes to, it's black tax. Let me just say, basically, black
Yeah.
tax. Black tax is a thing that I've really struggled with identity wise here,
Mm.
because in my head I'm just like, why, first of all, why are we doing this to each other? We're actually holding each other back when you assume that someone so and so is going to take care of you, and don't um try to take care of it on your own, or don't try to propel yourself to the future. Or so and so is taking care of you, but you don't care, you're still getting F's in school. you know I'm
Mm.
one of those people who questions those things, and I feel like I get pushback from that going back home, because it's like, well, this is how we do things here. And I'm like, even though it's how you do things here, can some of these things change? Because I feel like when you step outside of your culture, you're better able to look inside and see what is benefiting you and what is not benefiting you.
Mm.
And you have a bird's eye view when you step outside, you because you're exposed to different ways of doing things, and you realize, there's multiple ways to go from point A to point B. I don't have to use this one route. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just,
Mm-hmm.
you end up doing, deviating to a different path than what you grew up with. And it just becomes a whole, when you go home, people are like, why are you doing things like this? Why are you not contributing this? Why is this happening like that? And it's like, because why are we doing it in the first place? Or what is the purpose of this? Or we shouldn't be doing this, or I found a different way of doing things like this. And I don't know, I feel like people are not necessarily the most open to understanding that. They'll probably say, oh my goodness, she went to the States and she, it got into her head and blah, 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 without stopping to
Yeah.
think that actually she might have just learned, been exposed to different things, and she learned something different or something better in some aspects. Because there's certain things equally when I've come here, that I've seen
Mm-hmm.
how America does stuff, and I'm just like, no, I actually prefer the Kenyan way.
Yeah.
And I still keep the Kenyan way. Like, I really value how we check up on each other in Kenya. How, it's the individualism here in the Western world, I feel like it's too much. I
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
the community sense in Kenya. Now, I don't like the extreme version of it, which definitely exists, but I like the
Yeah.
community sense. It's one of those things in which I take from back home in Kenya. So, equally speaking, because people might think I'm just bashing, like, growing up in Kenya. Oh, I loved growing up in Kenya. I'm just saying there's certain things that I pick up from each and every culture, and there's certain things I drop from each culture. So, community
Mm-hmm.
sense is one of the ones that I dropped, that I kept from Kenya, and I dropped the one here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, how about you? What are
Mm.
some examples of, like, how would you say, some negatives, positives, and all that? Well, actually, negatives. I think I was talking about negatives.
Oh, negatives. Um, so it's funny. I just before I answer that question, just something I wanted to say as you were talking. I had this thought in mind that um in this part of the world, I feel that the focus is on self-actualization because it's like it's all about figuring out who you are, what's your purpose, and how far you can go. And in some way it's measured by, economic terms, like maybe how much money you can generate, how much wealth, or so there are all these metrics you can measure yourself by. And there's in a way it it can actually somehow do you a disservice to just solely focus on serving or like not thinking about yourself. So just because of the way this system is set up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, like, back home, the focus is that we are one group, like we are a community. So when you do something, everybody knows about it and everybody has an opinion about it. Everyone has a feeling about it. It's
Mm-hmm.
and in such a way that it might even discourage you from doing the thing that maybe, let's say, you wanted to do or that you're doing, because if the consensus is that what you're doing is negative, then all of a sudden it's just negative, like it's deemed like negative, and so do not pursue this or do not do this. So you just
Mm-hmm.
really lose your voice. um so I was just thinking as you were saying that, and I think people, if people haven't traveled to see how things are done in this part of the world, they might just think, as you said, like, oh, she's stingy, or like she doesn't care about us anymore. But the reality is that, in a way, the culture and the way things are set up, they force you to think about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, you have bills to pay, you have work to do. There's a lot of structure, there's a lot of record keeping. So,
Mm-hmm.
and there are laws that we have to follow. So, like, there's so much law and order and organization that people back home might not understand. So yeah. Um, but yeah, I think in terms of the negatives, I guess I've sort of touched on that. Um, about just losing your voice, and also losing that disconnection with family. Because, like, when we're in this part of the world, um, it's people obviously don't know what we have experienced by growing up in Kenya or Zambia. And it seems by default that we should connect with our families back home. But then they also don't understand us, and we're not there to
Mm-hmm.
experience what they're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I do feel that loss. it's a very natural loss, even though, I keep up with my family as much as I can, but there's still that loss because they're not here with me experiencing what I am experiencing. So it's almost like I'm just sort of getting an update on how their lives are and things like that. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the negative part too, to have family but still feel like you're a stranger to your own family.
Oh my goodness, that
Um,
is so, that like hits the nail on the head. You've said it so
yeah,
well.
it's so sad. So it's kind of like there's a sadness to it, like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because you're thinking about your cousins and everything, and it's like you just feel it's just this weird disconnection because the things you can connect on is just different. It's hard, you know. It's very
yeah.
true.
It's so true. And then it's like the person that I feel the most connected with is the person, as you said, like yourself, for example, that is literally experiencing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because then, I don't know if you have had to be in this situation where I, like, if I'm trying to tell a story to my family, it's like I have to give them context, introduction, context, so that they can somehow understand where I am coming from. Um, and it's just much easier to talk to somebody who already understands the context, who already understands what I'm going through. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like I am having to create like my second family outside my own family. Um, and yeah, and life keeps going.
That is, yeah, you summarized that really well. Like that's a huge issue. It's just imagine going back home and it's like you feel a bit lost. Like
Mm,
even like
yeah.
I just imagine if I move back home, there are gonna be certain things I don't like that I'd have to deal with because the things I like, I you do them here as well, and I take them
Mm-hmm.
with me and things like that. But you just going back home and just getting into the swing of things, getting into thinking like a Kenyan, acting like a Kenyan, and doing everything like a Kenyan. I feel like I act like I don't know, I'm in the middle, like
Mm,
Kenya and
yeah.
American, and so it's like it's hard to place
Yeah.
me. Kenya, America, no one's gonna like claim you. They're gonna be like, hmm, like where,
Exactly.
like
I
where do you fit? But I mean, in as much as
Yeah.
it's negatives, I think there's definitely also positives, which you also touched on some of the positives, in your and when you were talking about it earlier on, and you were saying how traveling just exposes you to a lot of things, and you know I, as I told you, my parents would say, "Oh, you have the best of both worlds because you're able to experience both of these countries." And in a sense, it's true because, and as much
Mm-hmm.
as I don't necessarily, like, I'm not sure what the statistics are on this, but I'd assume that most people in the world don't travel. That would be my assumption.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're accurate. I'm trying to remember the number, but yeah, like the people who actually leave their home countries to go live somewhere else is not a
Hmm.
very high number. We can Google that and report that next time. But yeah, it's not a very high number.
So
Um, so
that's interesting because I mean, because for someone like me, it seems like so many people. Like I know so many people who have done that, so it seems so commonplace to me. But again, I realize that
mm-hmm.
it's not as commonplace. Well, America, you realize it's one because Americans think it's the best country in the world, so they don't try to even leave their state. Some of them don't even leave their
Yeah.
state.
So
So
yeah, they don't even leave their state.
I was like, seriously, you don't even want to experience something new. But I also noticed that in Kenya as well, because I remember I had some friends in charge who I realized they don't have a passport, they never left the country, and I was like, huh?
Mm.
And then it's just, but so you realize when you get to experience these things, you really get to experience a different world, a different culture, and the beauty that comes with it. And there's a beauty to that. You know, yes, I might
Mm-hmm.
not fully fit in one place or the other, but I fit it in my own beautiful special category, which is beautiful, and it's opened me up to so many different opportunities um, out there, and it really expands
Mm-hmm.
and opens your mind and how you think, because I feel like the
Exactly.
way I think is much more progressive and progressive than both countries, because I have a mixture of both, and I'm like, this is good, this is necessary, this is not necessary, and it's just a whole amazing, it's just that the big thing is just my mind is much more open than it was before because of
Mm-hmm.
all the different exposures I've had, including the exposure I've had in Kenya. And I think that's just amazing. It's fun to be like, celebrate Kenyan culture at the same time, celebrate culture wherever you are at. And it's fun and it's beautiful, And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really an understated thing that I tend to forget, in the sense that
Yeah.
it's very typical. We all focus on the negative, 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 but there's
Mm-hmm.
so many positives out there as well, and that's it. Just makes me smile when I'm saying this. I'm like, oh, it's such a fun, aspect of you know living in both of these worlds. Going to
Yeah.
travel back, going to Kenya, coming back to the US, and be like, yeah, I'm going home. And then in Kenya, I'll be like, yeah, I'm also going back to my other home.
Uh,
And then it's like,
yeah.
it's kind of fun
And
and cutesy.
yeah. Fun and cutesy. Yeah, no, it's funny when we were talking about the negatives and I was thinking about that family disconnection and then you were like, what are the positives? And I was like, oh, yo, man, the positives are endless. As you said, you just have an open mind and also for me, like my empathy is also increased. Like
Mm,
there's almost this thing like I don't have a fear of like people I meet or my judgment is less. Like I actually get super excited when someone comes from a country that I've maybe seen it on a map or I want to travel
right?
and I know it just excites me so much. Um and I'm just like this is so cool. Like what I like about it is that it just frees me from a collective like judgment. You know
Mm-hmm.
how like in the world people have stereotypes of certain cultures, and people who don't travel or don't evaluate those stereotypes for themselves, they really hold on to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's they really hold on to them, and then um, for me, because I'm interacting with people from around the world, or I'm actually doing traveling, it's just like I'm just like, wait, where is this fear coming from? Like, I just literally talked to somebody from this country, and they're like the nicest person, and it's just what is going on? And a lot of these things, maybe it's just media and maybe some sort of propaganda, I don't know. But when you come down to actually getting to know people, people are literally like almost the same in the way in what they want, in their needs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just so fun to get to know someone that doesn't look like me, that does things differently, and like, oh gosh, I don't even know if I can trade that. Like, I just have so much joy um, thinking about it. And the other thing I talked about self actualization because I'm naturally growth oriented. I like learning. Um, and so, even myself, I ask myself, what am I not doing today that I should be doing today so that I can be this person next year? Like, those are the questions I ask myself. Those are the questions that bother me when I go to bed at night. Like, how am I not growing? Where am I stuck? Where are my inadequacies? And so I feel that being a part of this world allows me to expand myself, allows me to get out of like it just allows me to get out of like things that are not serving me, and I can then just become a better person. Um and I've realized that it's not even that I just want to become a better person or better than anybody, but I've just realized that I can do more things when I grow. Because if you asked me, Zell, to do a podcast, you'd be like, Cholwa, you're going to be doing a podcast 10 years from now. Like, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would be like, you're joking. Like, there's no way. Like, as shy as I used to be, or as reserved as I used to be,
Hmm.
maybe not shy, but as reserved, that would not, that would not have just crossed my mind. I would like, never. Um, but it's because of these exposures and these interactions with people that just have made me realize like it's possible, it's doable. Um, and so, oh gosh, I can go on and on, Zio. Sorry, I'm just like ranting now with the positives of all of this.
I mean, you're also smiling. This exact same thing when I was thinking about the positives. You know, it's there's a lot that we can talk about in regards to both the positives and the negatives, and you know this is part of our identity. Yeah, it's as I said. Sometimes I feel like I don't fully belong in either place. It's like I'm just floating
Mm-hmm.
back and forth in a sense. But then I realize it's because in the world has kind of it tries to put us in boxes.
Oh,
And when we
yes.
don't fit those boxes, they don't know how to identify us. And so it becomes they try to make it seem like, oh, you can't belong here because you didn't grow up here, or you don't belong here because, well, you left and now you act different. But it's just
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one thing I've always been doing is breaking out of those boxes, because identity is, for all of us, it's who we are, truly are, without the confines of the system. And the system has a
Mm-hmm.
lot to say, I feel like sometimes people might look at me and be like, huh, you're petite, black African, you're a doctor, huh, you love
Yeah.
anime, like you love anime, really? Okay, yeah. You listen to music from all around the world, yeah. K-pop, yeah.
Yeah.
Brazilian music, yeah. This music, yeah. And they look at me like, "Oh, really?" And I'm like, and then the funny thing is that I don't listen to much rap. Like if it's a song that I like, oh, I will listen to it. But other than that, I don't listen to much rap. And people assume you're black, you listen to rap.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you just hit the nail on the head. It's like, yeah, people want to like give you this identity, and then as yeah, they find out that I like to listen to classical music.
Hmm.
Um like it's recently become a thing. I told you I like yoga. Oh gosh, yoga. Like we can keep talking about it. And then so you introduced me to like reformed Pilates. Um, so Pilates is a thing. Skiing, like yeah, and people are expecting you to be like, oh, you should know this artist, this black artist, or this African artist, or the. And it's just like, no, mm, mm-mm, no, I don't. And so yeah, people really try it. And I was going to say I don't know if this is something we can talk about, like how do you address it, because I've been exposed to both worlds, or because we have been exposed to both worlds.
Hmm.
Sometimes even before I interact with someone, I can already see the feeling that they have towards like me, or like a sense that like they're thinking to themselves like, okay, this black woman, and it's like It's all right. I don't bite. Like cuz they people don't see that you have lived, like in the Western world enough to understand it, but you have also lived in another part of the world, like, back, like in my case, back home in Zambia. So like I can see both worlds. So I realized like, no, I'm so comfortable in my own skin and I know where I'm coming from. But just to see other people's expressions and the way just the way they act around me because they're trying to somehow create a narrative for themselves. It's just sometimes I find it so hilarious, and sometimes I don't even have time to associate myself with it because I'm like, I really don't have the energy to deal with this. If you want to talk to me, talk to me. If you don't, it's fine. I'm really okay. I'm gonna just move forward. So yeah.
All I'll say briefly is I think part of the reason why you might not be as affected by it is because you have a healthy self esteem. Because people
Mm,
who don't have healthy self esteem might be affected by it more. But I actually understand what you're saying. For me, I've actually reached a point which I'm just trying not to even read into anything. I'm just gonna move on, and then I'll
mm,
let you be shocked and keep on things hitting you like, huh? Wait a minute, huh? Because you best better believe I do get some of those reactions. Um, as a
mm-hmm,
female, young black female physician, when I am dealing with a 90-something-year
mm-hmm,
old white male, and you can see there that, but I don't care. I'm just literally gonna walk in, own it, walk out. I'll be like, you can think whatever you need to think, or it can register in your head. Let it register.
mm-hmm,
For me, I'm moving on, loving my life. I think it's because I realized that this is quote. What does it say? Like you really can't change what people think of you or do, like, or do to you per se, but you have control over your own
mm-hmm.
emotions. So
Yeah.
you don't have control over the other person. So not worrying as much about them, that's been a huge thing for me. Just like
Mm-hmm.
that, it is what it is. And yeah, but it's funny because that's the thing. I mean, we've talked about it. We could definitely talk about it another episode and more. Because this is a lot that there's a lot we can talk about in regards to this topic. But I think it was a really good past few 40 minutes. I think we've been talking or so. It's been
Yeah.
really nice to just talk about identity crisis, us being from Africa, Zambia and Kenya specifically, and moving to the West, and how this has shaped, kind of affected our identity in a sense, um, or at least how other
Mm-hmm.
people see it as well. I hope, I hope our listeners have found this enlightening and have enjoyed this conversation. We are on
Mm-hmm.
all the major podcast um, websites or sites. I can't remember what they're called. Apple Music, Spotify, you know, YouTube Music, you name it. You'll find our podcast there. Please rate it, like
Mm-hmm.
it, invite people who will benefit from our podcast. We would like to keep growing our community. I'm really grateful for those of you who have been sticking with us and listening to our podcast every week. Thank you so much. I just realized I don't think we've said thank you
Yes.
before. So
Yeah,
thank
no, thank
you
you.
for
Yeah.
the loyal followers that we have. Uh, Feel free to reach out to us on Instagram. We are on Instagram as the Feminine Outliers. You can DM us. Would love to hear from you. Would love to hear what you're learning. Would love to hear what your experiences are with in regards to identity crisis in whatever way or form you experience it. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, if you have any feedback, would love to hear it. Easiest way to get a hold of us would be Instagram, but you can also email us on the feminine outliers at gmail.com. But that is it for now. So until next time, have fun, live large, and don't be afraid to be an outlier.